Hi there. I thought, while I take a break from cycling, might be a good time to tell you about 5 life-changing risks I've taken in my life. First one, I was 18 years old. I was working in a lumberyard in London. I saw this ad in the paper. It said grape picking, south of France. So I thought, let's test myself. Let's go there. I'm on my own. I don't have much money. Got no contacts or anything over there. So I bought a ticket. It's on this called the Magic Bus back in the day. I used to go from London to India. And so I bought a ticket on that, and I was aiming for the south of France. I didn't have any job lined up. I just was going to go for the south of France and test myself, see if I could survive 18 years old. Luckily, on the bus out there, met a couple of other guys that did have a job lined up. It's just a little village it's called Plan de la Tour, outside Saint-Maxime, which is across the bay from Saint-Tropez, for anybody who knows the south of France. And so I didn't have a job though, so I went up to the French guy who owned the place, and said, like, do you have room for one more picker? And he said yes, he did. So we started picking. They put us up in this shed, the concrete shed out back, and I had a job. But the interesting thing about it was, after the war ended, all the armoured vehicles were abandoned by the soldiers. So what the local French people done is they hid these vehicles in the caves up in the mountains, and waited for everything to calm down, all the occupying troops like the Americans and British to leave, and then they brought them out again. And so when we was going from vineyard to vineyard, they used to tell us to jump in the back of this like armoured troop carrier. So we're driving down these little country lanes in the outback of France, and it probably hasn't changed since the war, and so you stand in the back, and it was eerie, but it was really cool. But it taught me that it doesn't matter what, I'm going to land on my feet. And it was a blast. And with these guys, with a little bit of money we earned, we went up to Amsterdam and we had some fun there. But it gave me the confidence that, put a backpack on and head off. Doesn't matter, you're going to make it. And later in life, I'd done that a few times, and there's probably another story in there, but maybe next time. Second thing I'd done was took a risk, which was life-changing. It was about a year later, I saw an ad in the paper, parachute jump. So I thought, you know what? Do I have the bottle to do a parachute jump? So me and this other guy, we signed up for it. I think it was like 2 nights in a hotel in London where they was getting us to jump off of tables and stuff, how to land properly and that kind of thing. And so the day come, and I was meant to meet this guy at the station, and he never showed up. So I said to myself, you know what? Do I do it, or do I back out? I was like, no, I'm doing it. So I went down there. It's a little Cessna. There was 4 of us in it. I can't remember what order I jumped out, but I just remember sitting on the edge, and it was a static line, so you didn't pull it yourself. You jumped out, and the line pulled your chute out. And we were taught, what to do in the case of emergencies and stuff like that. So I'm jumping out, parachute goes, and it's twisted. It's not deploying properly. So they taught us, you kick your feet and you spin yourself around, and it opened. And I just remember thinking on the way down, oh, this is great. And I remember I was swearing, in excitement, enjoying, this is effing great. And when I got to the ground, people were saying, we could hear you up there. I was like, oh yeah, it was great. But so that led to conquering the fear of heights, which interestingly later on, one of the other jobs I had as a kid in London was a high-rise window cleaner. And health and safety back then probably wasn't the same as it is now. I mean, one office building, it's in London, to get into the cradle, you had to climb over the top and drop into the cradle. So you're not tied on a nothing, And one day particularly, I remember, it was windy. So you got the cloth and you're wiping the window, and the wind takes the cradle away from the building, and then when you come back, you got the squeegee and you're doing that. It's like that. So, but yeah, that was good. Next occasion that comes to mind, it was a risk. I used to do stuff with the army. I wasn't part of the army. I was part of something called Operation Drake, which was designed to, if you can hear anything in the background, we're in a farmer's field just over there. So Operation Drake was designed for inner city kids that didn't really have the opportunity to experience the outdoors like this. And I was a bit older than some of the kids. I was like in my 20, just about 20 about then, I think. And a lot of them were like a bit younger. So my idea was like, you know, I would do this and I would become an instructor. And I would go, because they used to go all over the world doing stuff, you know, and they needed some leaders, I guess you would call them, be a leader. But they'd done stuff with the British Army. It's a Royal Tank Regiment. So we was going to do caving. And it's not caving like you walk into a cave and you see like all these beautiful stalagmites and stalactites. This is caving where you're on the floor, head turned sideways, because you've only got like 10 inches. So we made our way to this cave entrance, and it was pretty cool, just the entrance. You had to, you didn't walk in, you like crawled on your stomach underneath like this lip, like, you know, I remember there's a puddle there, and you was getting half submerged getting into the system. But this system was great. It was like bubbles. When a rock was molten, it formed bubbles, and there was like a corkscrew in between each bubble. Each bubble was probably like 10-foot kind of thing. And so we used to, well, what we'd done is like we would climb, squeeze your way around this corkscrew bubble, in a corkscrew into the bubble. And I would go first, and I would turn my light off when I got in the bubble. It was pitch black. You're like, I don't know how far underground you are. You're a long way underground. And it was really cool. And then you see a little light, and the next guy come through, and then the next guy, and there was like, I think it's about 10 of us, and when all of us are in there, and we move away through the corkscrew to the next bubble, 8 to 10 bubbles, I think it was. So I remember we was just getting near the exit, and literally for, I don't know, half an hour, we was on our stomach, head side was inching your way, because, you know, that's all the room you had. And I could see light just up ahead, so I knew pretty soon we'd be out. But it's a guy behind me, I guess it was just too much for him. He started freaking out, and he went all rigid, and he couldn't move. And it took the army guys about, I don't know, it seemed like half an hour just to calm him down, just so he could relax, so they could track him out. But that risk, I overcome any feeling of claustrophobia, so I'm pretty good in tight spaces now. I guess the next risk I took was probably emigrating. I was in Australia, backpacking, and there's a good video there, probably, like telling you how I got to Australia, what I'd done in Australia and stuff like that. It's pretty interesting for a young kid, early 20s. But I worked in a youth hostel up in Sunshine Beach near Noosa in Queensland, and used to meet loads of people coming through every day. And there's a couple of Canadian girls I got friendly with, and I thought, you know what, I've never been to Canada, I really should give it a go. So I had a visa for Australia for a couple of years, and so you have to have a return airfare to land there. And so I had my airfare paid, which is back to London. Then I just had to get a plane from London to where they lived, which was just outside Vancouver. So I got back to London, and I originally had no money, because I was in Australia. I was just working for room and board and fun. So I spent basically all my money. I got a visa, a 3-month visa for Canada. And back in them days, I used to go to, it was called bucket shops, and you'd buy a ticket to a destination, but you wouldn't know what airline you travelled on. You used to literally go to the airport and pick up a ticket. It's like, oh, and back then Air India was the one that was the cheapest. So I done that, and I went over, had a great time in Canada, and I thought, you know, I love it. I want to try and stay as long as I can, which was only another month. So I stayed another month, which interestingly was a very lucky month, because that was the year where the Air Canada from Vancouver to London actually blew up over the terrace, blew it up over the ocean. So I'm not saying I would have been on that plane, but it was around the time I would have been on a plane going back. So luckily that extra month worked out pretty good. I had to go back to England to apply to become a landed immigrant was then. And the girl who I was with at the time, her dad was fairly well to do. He pulled some strings, and got over there pretty quick. And you know what? That was a risk. I left everything that everyone I knew around away. Everyone I knew at home, I left to go to a place where I didn't really think the relationship was going to work out, but I thought it would be a better life if I could make it over there than it would have been in London, in England. And so I say, what the hell, I'm doing it. And I've done it, and I'm still here. And probably one more risk is worth talking about. So I worked in a lumber yard when a year or so after I got there. It's pretty hard to get a good paying job, and I got an inner London education, authority education. So you've got your street smarts, but you haven't got your book smarts. So you have a good work ethic, but you know. So I was a forklift operator, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's a good job, but you're not going to get super rich, you know. And I wanted more. I was with a new woman at the time, and I thought, yeah, this is the woman, and I gotta make a good life. So how am I going to do that? So we had five trucks at this lumber yard I worked at. I thought, look at them guys, like you guys make probably twice as much money as I make. I want to do that job. So I paid for myself to take class 3 truck license, and I got that. And these were crane trucks at this lumber yard. So I had no experience of a crane truck, and I've only just got my license. So you have no real experience on a truck either, really, even though you've got a license. So I went up to the owners and I said, look, if I work for free every Saturday, driving a truck and getting someone to show me how to do the crane and stuff, would you go for that? And they said, yeah, you got a truck license, work for free, okay. So then I had to find a driver, and this guy called Rick. And Rick, I know you're not watching this, but thank you very much. So I said to Rick, if I worked on a Saturday and you let me drive, would you show me how to operate the crane? And he said, yeah, sure. So basically the whole summer, I worked for free every Saturday. And just so that I could get the experience. So when if a job come up, I would be in there. The job did come up at the end of the summer. Ernie, he retired. Ernie just had a new truck. I think it's an L9000 Ford, and 6-month-old. So Ernie retired. So I thought, oh great, everyone's going to bump up. There'd be a truck for me. So they offered Ernie's truck to each guy in seniority, and each guy in seniority said, no, I'll stick with what I got. I'll stick with what I got. Because the owners, kind of unpredictable hard asses in a way, and no one wanted to damage or scratch a truck and get in trouble. So eventually they come to me and said, like, do you want the opportunity to drive a truck for us? And I said, yeah. They said, it's the new one. I said, I'm in. So I'd done it. And I drove for another 15 years at that company, making good money until I went into management. So there's 5 risks that I took that were life-changing, that worked out. But I guess the moral of the story is back yourself. Back yourself in any situation. Have trust in yourself, and things will work out. Live without regrets. Okay. Well, I better get cycling. But it's been a blast. I've appreciated this opportunity to sit in the shade and talk to you, and I hope you found it interesting. And like I say, if anyone is interested in any other stories I got, because I had a fairly eventful life, I got a few more stories that I could tell. So let me know in the comments. Okay, thank you very much for watching. See you next video.